Hey everyone, this is Fabio and welcome back to RPG Marathon Part 2. We're going to make a game discussion video on the second out of three RPG games that I've just beaten, and in all honesty, I didn't expect to beat this game yesterday night. I kind of knew that I was close to the end, but for whatever reason, even though it was quite late, I decided to push a little bit further and basically finish the game kind of unexpectedly because, as I said, I want to play a bit more, but also say, let's try, maybe I'm going to finish it, and that what happened. And I was actually very glad to do it. And the game I'm talking about is Star Ocean First Departure on the PSP, of course. The 2007 remake of the original 1996 Star Ocean game, the first of the series developed by Tri-Ace, that was originally published exclusively in Japan on the Super Famicom, so we never had this game here in the West until the PSP remake published by Square Enix. Because usually Enix, or I don't remember if it was just Enix or both Enix and Squaresoft, published the games before they merged into Square Enix. I don't remember that. Honestly, I actually never played a Star Ocean game until now. The reason is that, as I said, yes, there's the usual excuse that the first game was never released in Europe or North America. But the second game, on the other hand, on the PlayStation 1, Star Ocean Second Story, was released to the West. But I admit that I didn't know about it back then, because I'm sure if I would know about it, I would have buy instantly and loved it. I'm sure of it. I missed it. Then, when I started to know about this series was during the PS2 days, when the third game, Till the End of Time, was out. But at the time, I didn't own a PS2. I was an Xbox owner, so I missed that. And up until now, I missed The Last Hope on PS3. Now that I own a PS3, now that I own all the right systems, I can actually buy the entire Star Ocean series and keep playing it because, of course, I loved First Departure. And yesterday I actually saw on a game reproduction website a gorgeous reproduction card for Europe of the first Star Ocean, and who knows, in the future. It was a bit expensive, but who knows? It was very tempting. So yes, I'm finally getting into the Star Ocean series, a big RPG series that I've missed until now. And the reason why starting only now is because I wanted to play from the beginning. And First Departure on the PSP was the perfect opportunity to get into the Star Ocean series, and it really didn't disappointed my expectations. I loved this game from the first moment until the end. Of course, being originally a Super Nintendo game, could have been like a little more deeper or more have a more detailed story of certain parts, but we will talk about the story later. But of course, it's a Super Nintendo RPG. There were limitations back then, but that didn't absolutely influence my love for this game. The story of Star Ocean, it started in a different way than I expected, like just the first 5 minutes, because it looked like a typical like medieval setting for an RPG. I was like, okay, I thought Star Ocean was more sci-fi, but like 5 minutes into the game, your main characters actually meet uh, other characters, Ilya and Ronix, and then from that moment, the sci-fi part also starts. And from that moment, I was like completely hooked by the game. I was like, whoa! And it's awesome to think that this game was realized during the Super Nintendo age, I think. I mean, the plot was very interesting. Like, it involved, like, not only it's like a sci-fantasy kind of setting, but it involves, as I say, sci-fi elements, time travel. It's kind of out there in terms of story. So after this first 5 minutes, you're getting into more sci-fi stuff, but then you go back to the more fantasy setting of the beginning after you go back in time. I'm not going to spoil the story, of course. I just say that There are mainly four main characters: Roddick, Millie, Ilya, and Ronix, who meet on this planet called Rogue. So Roddick and Millie are locals, so they are Rockians, as they're called, while Ilya and Ronix are humans from Earth, and they meet randomly, completely by accident. Still, um, like the first time I saw the gorgeous cutscene when they meet, it was like, whoa, this is awesome. But we can talk about the graphics later. It's so easy to go on tangents with these kind of things. Um, like the teleport was really like Star Trekky in a way. I love that. So they meet Ilya and Ronix, and basically this big adventure starts that involves, as I said, like sci-fi elements and time travel, especially because to stop a, a certain plague, the main characters travel back in time in order to acquire the only thing that can actually cure this plague that is affecting the planet Rogue. And this travel back in time will allow you to meet the rest of the characters of the game. That this is a big part actually that I want to talk about, and fighting the main villain of that time, this archdemon Asmodeus, who is actually connected with the final villain of the game. But I'm just talking about this. I hope I haven't spoiled everything. But I'm sure that most of you actually already played Star Ocean. I was the only idiot who hasn't played it yet. But so that's the general story. So it involves sci-fi elements, sci-fantasy elements for the most part, and time travel, which is very common on Super Nintendo games, I have to say. But so I liked this story, but it's interesting for what I read that Tri-Ace actually um, some stuff of Tri-Ace actually comment that the real Star Ocean, as they imagine it, actually started with the third game, Till the End of Time, on PS2, because that's from what I read. I haven't played it, so from what I read, it's the first one that it's entirely exclusively sci-fi, not sci-fantasy, because apparently Second Story, Second Evolution, it's still sci-fantasy. Maybe there were limitations. I don't know. Maybe it was easier to connect with the audience if it was more sci fantasy, because at the time RPGs especially were more based on the fantasy medieval setting, like sci-fi other than Fantasy Star. Up until the PlayStation, then we have games like Xenogears and the Final Fantasy, but from Final Fantasy VII. But it's just I don't know why they didn't went full on sci-fi from the beginning. Because I have to say I love this sci-fi RPGs. It's one of my favorite kind of RPGs, together with horror RPG. I have to say, games like Star Ocean. Now I love this. The Fantasy Stars, of course. I absolutely love the idea of the sci-fi futuristic technological elements and setting in an RPG. And I mean, there's nothing wrong, of course, with the fantasy medieval. I love that. I grew up with that. But it's a nice change of pace sometimes. The best thing is, of course, like combining the two, alternate from the fantasy to the sci-fi. Um, what's a great thing, I didn't, since I wasn't familiar with the Star Ocean games, of course, I didn't know about the battle system. Let's move on with that. Because I didn't know that Tri-Ace was formed by former Namco employers. Basically, the story is that part of the staff was unhappy with Tales of Fantasia and left the company to form Tri-Ace. And I have to say, I only played one Tales of game so far, and that is Tales of Fantasia. And of course, the combat system is very similar. Star Ocean is an action RPG. It's not turn-based. I didn't know that, and I love action RPGs, so that wasn't a shock. And I also played Tales of Fantasia, as I say. It's the only Tales of game that I played so far on the Game Boy Advance. And comparing the two games, that it's kind of unfair because the first departure is a remake, so I should play the Super Nintendo game to have a more fair comparison. But comparing the two, Star Ocean was so much more fluid in battle than Tales of Fantasia. I don't know about modern Tales of games. I'm sure they're fluid as well. I have to buy some. It's the Tales of series is a big miss for me. I haven't played almost all the games, so but sooner or later I'm gonna play more of them. I have Tales of Eternity on PSP, so I can play a second one when I can. But I really like this combat system. It was very fluid, very much more responsive than the one in Tales of Fantasia. And interesting for both combat and the cutscenes, the dialogues. Star Ocean uses a lot of voice acting. Basically, most of the game has voice acting. I don't know if the Super Nintendo version, the Super Famicom, I should say, the Super Famicom version, it's the same. I have no idea, but I have mixed opinion about it. As you know, I grew up from like the NES to, and especially my golden age as a gamer was during the PlayStation 1 days, and those were the days of when voice acting was becoming the norm. I mean, it was there before, but it was really with the PlayStation 1 that voice acting started to spread and became common in games. So I have an appreciation for bad voice acting in a way, and I'm not saying Star Ocean is bad. I mean, it's much better for the most part of Grandia, Resident Evil, and um, and other games of that generation, um, or like Lunar, for example. And you have to divide the voice acting into two parts. There are the dialogues and the story, and that voice acting is actually good for this kind of game. The actors were actually like acting good, I think. Like always in RPGs, I would love to have the option of having both the original Japanese voice and the English dub. Maybe it's too complicated to have that. I would like to hear the difference because, for example, I love hearing the original voices, like Japanese in anime. I never listen to a dub anime, if possible. Mm. Because I grew up when I was little, anime were exclusively dubbed. There wasn't internet yet or YouTube and stuff like that. And let me tell you, uh, Italian dubbed anime are horrible, horrible, horrible. So already jumping from the Italian to English was an improvement, but then thanks to the internet and buying DVDs, then you can actually hear the original voices. It's another universe. But I was surprised how much I liked the voice acting during the dialogues, so the main part of the story. On the other hand, during battle, it wasn't that good, mainly because you can use special skills in combat, of course, that you progressively learn by leveling up. The problem is that the computer, the other players, the one that you do not control, use these skills every second, so you have to hear their voices and these attacks every second. It gets really annoying really fast. Um, what was the one, for example? There is this attack, Avenging Fist by Ilya, and say like, Avenging Fist, Avenging Fist, Avenging Fist. I was like, oh, shut up! So for the most time, I set the other the rest of my party of not using the skills. So probably it was a bad decision. I could have just turned off the music or whatever. But on the other hand, the music in the game was good. I wanted to listen to like the battle theme and everything. So there is this difference in the voice acting of the game between the dialogues, which are actually good, and the battle dialogues. So basically, screaming the names of the attacks, which are not good because they're really annoying. But that's a detail. For the most part, for what matters, that the story, the dialogues was actually good. Some actors were better than others, I have to say. Uh, but for the most part, I liked the voices. Like I like Roddick's voice, Millie's voice. Ilya was actually good. Um, so yeah, overall the voices were good, but battle were really annoying. Um, Another thing that I have to mention, it's the characters. As I was talking about their voices, let's talk about them more specifically. I don't know if it's will be the same on the rest for the rest of the Star Ocean games. There is this peculiar system in the game about both the recruitment and development interaction between characters. Basically, as I said, there are four main characters. So, as I said, Roddick, Millie, Ilya, and Ronix. Those are the main characters of the game. But once you go back in time, you can recruit more characters. Um, but there is this system that if you recruit some of them, it's not really a system, but there is this thing that if you recruit some of them, you may not be able to recruit others, or you can miss characters entirely. It's kind of interesting, and in a way, it reminds me of Final Fantasy VI that you're actually able to miss characters, something that it doesn't happen anymore in RPGs nowadays. And that's pretty interesting. I can see that it's nothing shocking. I didn't know about it, so I discovered progressively. Um, but a thing that I would like to talk about are the private action. I don't know if, again, just like recruitment of characters, it's something always present in the Star Ocean games, because I wasn't a huge fan of it. But let me explain why. Per se, the idea was nice to have the option of relaxing, especially when each time you visit a new town, but also when you come back to an old town, you have the option of taking this private action with basically interaction with the characters. Like the group splits when they enter a town, so you can speak with each member of the group separately and like develop the characters and the interaction between them. The thing is, I didn't like it very much. I like it and don't like it very much because, to me, the interaction between characters should not be an option. You can miss, you can miss everything basically, like the entire development of the characters, if you don't do these private actions. It's up to you. Just as you can miss characters, you can miss the entire development of a certain character. For example, basically I played the game twice, let's put it this way, because it's not a very long game. It took me 20 hours to beat this. But I have to play basically twice because sometimes I miss a character. Actually, I played three times. I say that because I wanted to recruit a certain character, Fia, but couldn't because at the beginning of the game I recruited Seus. So I started again and then progressed and then did the story with Fia. Then I was towards the end of the game, and there was this big mystery to me about Joshua's sister. And I want to explore his story a bit more. So basically, I kept the save file, the last save point of Past Rogue. Do that; it's important if you want to develop more the characters. And started to interact. I started to do more private actions. So basically, I discovered all this story between him and Mavel. Basically, that I ignored it at first. I didn't know about it. So you can miss a major part of the game if you ignore this, and that's my complaint. That it's not big. It absolutely didn't ruin the game for me. I'm not saying that, but it's just that it shouldn't be optional. The character development should always be there. Not, I don't care about developing my characters. Let's just go on with the story. One of the main point of an RPG, it's the character development and interaction, for me at least. It's one of the main thing that I love about RPGs, and being optional, it's like, really? It should be compulsory. It should be a major part of the game anyways. But it's just up to you. I mean, I did as much as I could, and I still think that I missed a good part of the interaction of certain characters. But maybe I'll just play it again, or I'll see, because I gotta say it's not a long game, and it's also not very difficult for the most part, but sometimes can get frustrating. Let me say that, especially towards the end, when there are enemies that can paralyze you or petrify you. Those were the worst. But apart from that, for the most part, the difficulty, it's okay. It's nothing too hard, but it's even too simple. And again, because a good thing about the private action, however, it makes the game less linear than it might be if you ignore it and just follow the story straightforward. As I said, you miss a major part of the game, and the game becomes very linear. On the other hand, you can constantly go back to old towns to see more private action between maybe a new character that you just recruit. For example, my second time, since as I told you, I kept my first save file, the last one in past Rogue, so I can have more character development. So basically, something happened that I needed to recruit a new character, basically. So I looked for Welch, and after I recruited her, I started to go through all the towns in order to see more more private actions, and she's hilarious, by the way. She's a lot of fun. Um, so as I say, also for the speaking to complete the difficulty speech, one thing, once you reach the final area, the final tower, before you have to face the final boss, there is this dungeon of the 7 stars. How's it called? Something like that. Like, there is one final dungeon that it's basically grind heaven in a way, because every battle there, it basically gives you 5 level, at least 2 levels per battle. It's insane. You get like 100,000 experience point. I was shocked by that. I didn't expect that, and that helped me immensely during the final boss. Basically, I beat the final boss on my first shot because I was, I think, at least 15 levels stronger than the advice one. So I was level 88, basically. I never had like characters in RPGs as strong as in Star Ocean, so that kind of surprised me. But and I absolutely didn't explore the entire dungeon. After a while, I was like, I think I'm strong enough to face the final boss, and I obliterated him, both of them. So let's move on to another thing that I actually liked about this game, and that is the music. I really like the soundtrack of First Departure, and especially my personal favorite was the Overworld theme. That was really good, all like in a way or orchestrated. It was a really good theme, but for the most part, the soundtrack was good. I liked it. I might look for it actually, and I cannot wait. If was the beginning, this is just the beginning. I cannot wait for the soundtrack of Second Evolution, and especially the most modern one, like Till the End of Time and The Last Hope International. I really cannot wait. And speaking of like more recent Star Ocean games, of course I have to mention the announcements of the new Star Ocean game on PS4, PS3 also, I think, like for newer console at E3. Well, it was announced before E3, but we finally saw more at E3. And I was, first of all, I was shocked that they announced a new Star Ocean game. It's been a while since Last Hope. How's it called? Faithfulness, Integrity? Something like that. I don't remember, but I consider myself a Star Ocean fan. I cannot wait to play Second Evolution and progressively the rest of the series, and definitely buy all of them and play all of them because I love it. As I said, I love this sci-fi RPG, even though this counts as a sci fantasy, but details. And I really enjoy my time with First Departure. Thinking if there's something that I've missed, maybe, I don't know. What else? What else I should say about First Departure? Um, Nothing else. I think I covered most of the things I want to say. So this is it for RPG Marathon Part 2. We're almost there. Today I'll start, whenever I have the time, my third game, and I cannot wait to play that. But I'm not going to tell you what it is, of course. But for this part 2, Star Ocean First Departure, fantastic game, highly recommended for the PSP, of course. If you don't have it and you feel like RPGs, you need to own this. Oh, as you can see, I bought the North American one because I love the cover rather than the European, but it's nothing different, of course. Huge recommendation if you're an RPG fan, but you probably already played it. As I said, I was just late because I bought the PSP kind of recently, so this is a series that I always wanted to play because I missed it for so long, and now I started to get into it. Definitely a Star Ocean fan, so I cannot wait to play more of this and to explore the rest of the Star Ocean series. And this is it. Like always, guys, thanks so much for watching. I'll see you next time. Take care.